from Hong Kong to Brisbane, Australia, on a voyage that will see him travel through 10 countries and in the process raise awareness about 10 of the most important charities across the region. It's an adventure that will test his limits during a trip that will be exciting, dangerous, eye-opening and always breathtaking. Join him each week as he travels wheel to wheel. After 9 countries, delays and a final water crossing, it all comes down to this. A ride across the huge empty vastness that is Australia. The final colossal leg of wheel to wheel.
I can't believe I'm home, back on the red dirt of Australia. After 98 days, 9 countries and 20,000 kilometres, I crossed the Timor Sea to Darwin. 10th country for wheel to wheel, home sweet home. In Australia. Woo!
Arriving in the final country of Australia was awesome. It was a huge sense of achievement for me. The difficulties of making my way through the congested communities of Asia, finally arriving in Australia, albeit by plane and not on my bike. This is it. This is the last leg. This is the last charity. I'm on my way. I'm going to do it.
My brother Todd has flown here to greet me. Todd will ride with me on the remaining 5,000 kilometres. The lengths he's gone to be able to support me, to be a companion rider throughout Australia is amazing. From Darwin, we'll ride to Alice Springs, to the sacred lands of Uluru, then across the unforgiving Simpson Desert, and finally on to Brisbane. Todd and I were ready to hit the road, but unfortunately, my bike wasn't. I left Dili completely fed up, knowing I was facing an 8-day delay to ship my bike and getting shafted on the cost. However, there was nothing I could do about the vagaries of ferry schedules between Dili and Darwin. In the meantime, I reminded myself that I'm home. My sister Shay's also here, and I'm determined to make the most of the situation. And in Darwin, I found a warm welcome waiting for me.
Oh, hello, Lord Mayor. Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Terrific. Thank you very much for having us.
The Lord Mayor's reception gave me a great chance to spread the word about the 10 causes that form the heart of the Wheel to Wheel expedition.
I'm very excited about the prospect of us being able to showcase the work that is being done by Nailsma to that huge audience of tens of millions of people who really don't fully understand all of the environmental issues that this country is facing and the work being done by Indigenous people here.
This has been a great example, I think, of human endeavour and just putting something effort in, and some great things are coming out of that. And so it's really great to see this sort of stuff, and an incredibly worthy organisation that's receiving the benefit of it.
I was especially looking forward to meeting up with Joe Morrison and our designated organisation, Nailsma, and learn more about the crucial environmental challenges they're tackling.
This is the first time for us to get this level of recognition in Australia, and we're very much looking forward to working with Morgan and his team over the next couple of days to tell this very important story about what's going on in this part of the world.
But before my work with Joe and Nailsma began, Todd and I took the opportunity to explore the top end of Australia. Only this time, I was on 4 wheels, not 2.
Our efforts to go exploring in a 4-wheel drive have ended with a road being closed. This is often the case at this time of year. There's a huge wet season from really January through to about April. Even though we're now in June, this year it was the biggest wet season in history ever recorded. We'll have to find another way.
The wet season left behind some serious hurdles to overcome, but we were determined to forge ahead. Darwin is surrounded by numerous national parks and conservation areas. All of the protected areas that Todd and I travelled through offer unique, amazing and sometimes dangerous natural attractions.
Did you see those croc tracks in the mud there right when we got out? Unbelievable.
That looked like a big croc. Also, crocodiles are predators. They're not scared of anything. It's their territory. and everything that comes into that territory is fair game. So we are the prey and they are the predator.
Todd and I continued exploring the upper reaches of the Northern Territory, hiking, swimming and camping.
I just am mesmerised by the beauty, the rugged beauty of the northern part of Australia. Apart from being one of the most beautiful areas to visit in the Northern Territory, Gunlong Falls is also famous for featuring in the movie Crocodile Dundee, an iconic Australian movie from the 1980s.
But even amidst this awesome natural beauty, I couldn't help thinking about the frustrating obstacles I faced. On this particular day, it wasn't the crocs that we had to worry about.
Well, it looks like the decision to come out on this road is going to prove to be a costly one. The rangers that patrol these areas have stopped us on the road, taking photographs of nature and are intending to prosecute me for being on the road. So that's the way it works here in Australia.
The bike delay weighed heavily on my mind, but I took solace in the beautiful landscape around me and the chance to explore these ancient lands with my brother. As I swam in the crystal clear waters and looked out over the rugged valleys, it felt good to remember why I was here, why I'd come this far.
Camping about 20 metres over from the bank, and this is our bathtub for tonight. Pretty beautiful, and hopefully no crocs. There's at least no croc signage. So if there is a croc here, then no one knows about it.
My time in the bush with my brother, our very own walkabout if you will, provided the perfect preparation for what I was about to witness with Nailsma. I'm excited to see how Nailsma supports Indigenous people, cleverly using traditional knowledge to solve contemporary environmental challenges. When Wheel to Wheel returns, I get to experience firsthand a part of Australia that few have ever seen. Dawn breaks over Fog Dam. As the mist rises and the savannah wakes up, I'm joined by native herons, egrets and ducks on an early morning walk. Like them, I'm about to take to the skies. Doors off, commando style, for a ride over the natural wonders of the Northern Territory.
Kakadu National Park at the top end of Australia. It's absolute dreamland up here. You get to see millions of years of history through the formations of rock, incredible biodiversity. Just like the trees, unbelievable. Everyone in the world has to do this at least once.
Our pilot takes us over this incredible patchwork landscape that's been carved out by ice and water over millions of years. The helicopter ride is exhilarating. Wow, if only I could wake up this way every day. You'd be insane to try and hike or walk anywhere in this brutal landscape. But what a thrill for me to experience this epic, untouched environment. I can totally see what's at stake when it comes to land conservation and the important work that Nailsma are doing in this part of Australia.
The organisation that I head up is an organisation that works with Indigenous people to reinstate their traditional knowledge practices and works with governments and other stakeholders in this part of the world to have better outcomes for Indigenous people who in this part of the world have gotten back about 40% of the terrestrial landmass, so there's quite a large area of land that Indigenous people have been able to get back into their control. Some of the old traditional knowledge into play and putting a value on that and ensuring that the kinds of development that occurs in Northern Australia is sustainable and consistent with Indigenous people's aspirations.
What impressed me most about Nailsma is their system of linking traditional fire management practices with today's need for carbon emission trading schemes.
What we're doing is we're using traditional knowledge, and it's validated by science, around fire management and fire ecology, and reinstating people back into the landscape and putting back into place fire regimes that are the sorts of fire regimes that are mosaic but also necessary for habitats for small mammals and other important species in this part of the world.
During my time with Nailsma, I got to meet Glenn James, Nailsma's Carbon Social Programs Officer, and his brother, Bentley. They've lived and worked with the Indigenous communities for decades. Bentley speaks a whole variety of Aboriginal dialects, and I tell you, these guys know the country like the back of their hand.
Traditional landowners, Indigenous people across the north of Australia have been burning their country for millennia. It's part of their tradition. They start early in the dry and they burn in a patchwork type manner, generally speaking, and they burn for a number of different reasons. For hunting, to find water, to clear pathways, to keep bush tucker happening, to keep the country verdant, as part of their land management.
Burning was really important, and I like burning my country. I want to live the way my ancestors were living here before.
Most importantly, the controlled burns reduce the chance of raging, unmanaged bushfires, which release massive amounts of greenhouse gases.
Aboriginal people love a fire, they know fire, they understand fire, and they live with it. They're born in smoke, they get smoked when they die, you know, and everything in between is smoke and fire. That pretty much stopped from the sort of the 1970s. So we're actually working with Nailsma to try and reintroduce that fire management back into the landscape. But the really interesting thing is that we're not just using the ancient traditional technology of Aboriginal people, we're linking that to the very next wave of the economy, which is climate change and greenhouse gas abatement.
So Nailsma works with governmental agencies and rural fire management groups to help employ Indigenous people to manage the land sustainably. They reduce emissions through traditional burning practices and can then trade the carbon savings with local industry to offset their pollution output.
It's a scheme that has a lot of potential for the whole of the tropical savannas and possibly further down into the rangelands in time. All those who are collaborating have worked very hard to now get the first carbon accounting methodology into the Australian government's carbon farming initiative legislation.
A program that uses ancient wisdom to provide jobs and reduce pollution. It's an ingenious system and a real win-win situation.
I don't think at the end of the day it's going to be a hard pitch, because it's such a good, successful story that not only do you get these greenhouse gas outcomes, but you also get these outcomes which support Indigenous people, employment, cultural aspirations, and the ability for people to stay in their country.
Next on the agenda is a trip to the remote Crocodile Islands, where I'll learn more about how Nailsma is supporting local knowledge to benefit the environment. But first, it was time for me to resume the elusive and oftentimes dispiriting quest for the return of my bike.
But we've been told that this shipping company doesn't unload the boat on weekends. So it's another couple of days wait to get the bike off the boat, then have a quarantine inspection, and hopefully be underway by maybe day 113.
Delays on top of delays. My bike was just sitting over there in one of those containers. It was just sheer laziness. This had to rank as one of the most exasperating parts of the journey so far. My only consolation was my next excursion with Nailsma. When Wheel to Wheel returns, I get a bird's eye view of the Northern Territory, as well as a closer look at how traditional knowledge is being used on the Crocodile Islands. It was a beautiful, clear day, the perfect backdrop for our excursion.
This is brilliant. We're in a small aircraft. We're about to take off from Darwin to the Crocodile Islands. I've got Glenn from Nailsma with me. What are we going to see today, Glenn?
Well, we're going to head out to a remote Crocodile Island, have a look around for some turtle eggs, see some stone fish traps. There'll be some Crocodile Island rangers there, and we'll have a chance to talk about them and their language and culture and their technology.
After a rough ride over the track, we landed in a quiet, untouched, unspoilt wilderness.
It's awesome. It doesn't get any more remote than this. You see the colours in the ocean. The environment here is completely pristine.
no people whatsoever. I can understand why they want to protect this land so much. It's absolutely amazing.
In this part of Australia, people can't just pop down to the local shopping centre when they need food. They survive, in a lot of ways, just as their ancestors did. Fishing, trapping and foraging.
Oh, it's beautiful. So white. I can see one in there, yeah, just the edge of one. Many there, Leonard, isn't there?
Oh, many. Maybe 35 to 50.
Oh, that is awesome. They're actually quite soft. How are these small turtle eggs being managed for sustainability?
Well, the people of the islands who are forming the Crocodile Islands Ranger program spend all their time tracking around the beach, checking where turtle eggs have been laid. And those areas that they've cut off from predation that stop other people being able to come and take them, they look after them and allow those little turtles to go down to the sea. But the ones on these beaches here that are predestined to be food beaches, where people come to get food to continue to do their traditional diet and continue their traditional practices, they come and take these eggs here, but only these ones, and all of the other ones get looked after and taken back to the sea. So other things that might predate them, like pigs or goannas or dogs, are kept off the islands to make sure that all of the turtles get back to the sea.
Absolutely incredible.
We walked out past the sand where the traps are built using just the rocks. The fish swim in with the tide and are trapped as the tide goes out. But, as local ranger Leonard told me, the islanders take only the fish they need and let the rest go.
Right here we can see a way of teaching the rest of the world how Indigenous people work in harmony with their country, leaving what they don't need and taking what they do, and managing the other resources in their environment in a sustainable and harmonious manner. What a lesson.
All over the island, I witnessed amazing examples of how Indigenous people not only live off the land, but respect and care for it at the same time. But undoubtedly, the most inspiring part of the trip was meeting Laurie Barawanga, 90 years young, recently named as the Senior Australian of the Year. Laurie has devoted her whole life to passing on the stories of the land and sea to the next generation.
Few people actually take the time to go out into these communities and really listen to what Aboriginal Australians want. They want to be on their country. They want to effectively be left alone to live in the way that they've lived for tens of thousands of years. What we're forcing onto them is a different set of values and a different style of civilization to what they know.
That's going to be the great challenge of the 21st century for Australia, is how they engage with Indigenous peoples who want to live on this land and want to live out on country and who want to participate and provide services for the greater good of Australia.
I felt completely recharged after my visit to Crocodile Islands, seeing how much the Indigenous people cherish this pristine natural environment. It made me realise we can all learn from their traditional ways.
It's really important that we consider Indigenous people in the mix of globalisation and development, and particularly for us here in Northern Australia, I think there's a lot to contribute towards ensuring that Indigenous people are not just consulted, but Indigenous people drive development in this part of the world, so we end up with not just a romantic notion that people have been here for 50,000 years, but we're also getting people to think about, well, what's the next 50,000 years in this part of the world going to look like? And that's going to be very important for us.
It's day 111 of the World's Well expedition. If you can't be on my bike riding through the Australian outback like I should be, then the next best place to be is at the V8 Supercar Triple Crown Cup here in Darwin.
Action brought me some luck. At long last, my bike.
The bike has passed quarantine. Now we can ride out of Darwin and head into the outback.
Literally came out of the docks in Darwin, got on the bike and started riding south. It was that simple, we had to get it done.
My time in Australia's north with Nailsma was educational and truly awe-inspiring. But I've got loads more work to do and thousands of kilometres to go before I cross the finish line in Brisbane. When Wheel to Wheel returns, Todd and I head deep into the outback to do some of the most celebrated sites in all of Australia. I'm home, but I'm far from home with lots of hard riding ahead. It feels surreal to be back on the bike, especially being in Australia, with its vast open roads and huge sky above.
Sort of almost not fair to think about Australia as one country of 10 because the enormous scale of this country is incomparable to anything I've been through. I knew that the conditions would be very different, and in a sense it's a separate expedition. A lot of the other countries have similarities, but Australia is stark contrast.
Despite being behind schedule, we had to stop at Devil's Marbles, about 400 kilometres from Alice Springs. These granite boulders, known as Kalu Kalu, as well as the surrounding land, were officially handed back to their traditional owners only a few years ago. We were trying to make up time, riding at breakneck speed, and as the shadows lengthened across the blacktop, praying we didn't encounter a kangaroo. Imagine a solid rock mass of 80 plus kilograms, taller than me, travelling up to 60 kilometres per hour. So between the extreme desert temperatures, potential road dangers and our high speed, it made for a very, very tough day.
The challenge is managing your mind to handle the very long distances and the remoteness of not passing many cars as the hundreds of kilometres roll by.
But I didn't mind the long hours because this part of the expedition was all about the ride. After a quick pit stop to service the bike, we headed out of Alice Springs towards Australia's ultimate off-road test of biking skill and endurance. The perilous, the hazardous, the famous Think Racetrack. If I ever questioned the long hours in the gym, I certainly didn't now. I was using every muscle to keep my wheels on the track. This is what I'd trained for, right here, right now.
You'll never guess where we woke up this morning after an epic day riding from Alice Springs to Think on the infamous racetrack there. 260 kilometres of death-defying off-road action. We crept into this location under the cover of darkness, set up camp right beside our bikes, and we woke up here, right in the geographic centre of Australia.
Our reward for days of hard riding was a helicopter trip over the sacred and magical Uluru. It was absolutely breathtaking.
We're high above Uluru in the centre of Australia. Such a proud moment for me as an Australian for the expedition to have come this far and to arrive at this iconic monolith, the world's largest single rock. There's something alien about it, just sitting here out on this flat plain amongst the desert. Absolutely awesome.
For me, on this occasion, it was ultra special because I'd always dreamt of riding my motorbike through Australia to the dead centre. Arriving by bike, it was easy to see why this area has been revered for so long.
Yeah, even though when you see these incredible icons of Australia like Uluru behind us, you've got to remember that these have been here for millions of years and there's been people on this land for tens of thousands of years. The work that we've been doing with Nailsma really feels so important to me now. I feel like I'm understanding it more and more each day when we travel through all of this countryside in the centre of Australia.
Yeah, it's so easy to see why the Aboriginal people have such a connection with the land and with nature, and it's something that you just feel wherever you go, and it's just an absolutely magical place.
What I was seeing became more awe-inspiring hour by hour. The sounds of wild animals and the energy of 1,000 stars greeted us every night as my brother and I camped and rode across the middle of Australia.
You turn the lights off and you see the stars, and more stars than you ever could have possibly appreciate. And living in Hong Kong with air pollution, you never get to see that. But out there in the centre of Australia, the whole world seems to come alight at night. You hear the desert, you hear the animals, the wind going through there, you know, the stars. It's amazing. It really is amazing.
Yet another 10-hour day on our way to Uluru-Kata National Park. As we got closer, I could see the huge red monolith rising in the distance. To the Anangu people, Uluru is their temple, their cathedral, their home. They've cared for this land for tens of thousands of years, and they tell the story of their people through its plants, animals, dust and rock.
We're here at Uluru-Kata National Park at one of the many environmentally sensitively designed viewing platforms overlooking Kata, formerly known as the Olgas and one of the real gems of the Red Centre of Australia. The Wheel to Wheel expedition has come here and we're just absolutely loving the environment, the sensitivity of all of the development that's occurred around here.
After one amazing journey by air, it was time to strap on the walking shoes for a closer look at Kata incredible rock formations. Made up of 36 domes, the rocks culminate in Kata Mount Olga, over 1,000 metres above sea level at its highest point.
It's not until you get up close and personal with Kata that you really appreciate the incredible magnitude and scale of this rock formation. From a distance, it just sort of sits there on the horizon, but here you really see how massive it is. It's awe-inspiring.
The more time one spends at this site, the more amazing this formation becomes. We covered over 4,000 kilometres in only 3 days, and we were now on the home stretch. But how could I imagine what the harsh and unforgiving outback had in store for us next? Our sense of adventure was about to be tested to the breaking point. Breaking down in the middle of Australia was my worst nightmare. And unfortunately, I came across a group of travellers who did just that. But lucky for them, we were carrying a satellite phone which enabled them to call for help. Todd set a course for us along a river in the desert, well off the main roads. He had his heart set on trying some really technical off-road rides as we made our way east towards Brisbane. I knew the ride wasn't going to be easy. It was really one of the last physical challenges of the trip, and I was ready to conquer it. 8 hours and we've covered only 65 kilometres. 19 crashes, a smashed clutch lever, bent panels, plus no rear suspension. And now, the tracks disappeared. We were hours from anywhere, almost out of fuel and losing light fast.
I came off the bike about 20 times in a 70 kilometre trail, not a road but a trail through the outback of Australia. Very difficult sandy conditions. We were supposed to be in Alice Springs last night, but we've had to camp by the side of the road. The reason is that the fuel station that we were expecting to refuel at is closed, and so we had to camp overnight to wait for it to open today. So after we pack up here, we're going to go get some fuel and head off to Alice Springs.
We may have had all the bells and whistles for global adventuring, but if something went wrong, we knew we were still hours away from help. At the end of the day, it took a bit of planning and a lot of willpower to get Todd and I across Australia.
Just about to set off here from Alice Springs on day 120, which could be Potentially the most dangerous day of the entire expedition. We're travelling over 600 kilometres across the northern part of the Simpson Desert. My load now in total is probably about 370 kilograms, all up, including myself on the bike.
Knowing that any slip-up or mishap would send me flying, I had to stay focused through the entire ride. It exhausted me completely. As we left the outback, the geography started to change too. It was greener, there were more trees and more cars. But in a funny way, I started to miss the country folk, and I realised I'd grown to appreciate their style of life.
See that community spirit, that sense of togetherness where people wave at each other and say hello when they're driving past, and you can stop and have a chat on the side of the street. And I started to be reminded of what happens in urbanisation, and that's an anonymity that starts to creep into life, where people don't say hello to each other, they don't even know their neighbour, they walk past each other in a busy haste.
But I had promises to keep and miles to go before I could sleep. So into Queensland we rode, through Charleville, Roma and Toowoomba, towards the Big Smoke, Brisbane. The final 50 kilometres into Brisbane was like dream time. I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't feel anything either. All that had come before flashed in front of my eyes. It was like I was just floating towards the finish line. And then, outside Brisbane, in a little town called Mount Nebo, a group of friends and family were waiting to meet me, right there on the side of the road, with the Queensland parrots squawking in the trees. Todd and I pulled into the rest area.
125 days, 25,000 kilometres, 10 countries, 10 amazing charitable organisations, and it's all come to this. We're 50 kilometres outside of Brisbane. I've been met by about 20 old school friends and supporters of Wheel to Wheel for the last stage of this epic expedition. I cannot believe we've finally arrived at this motion. I'm filled with so many different feelings about how it is to have ridden this far and now for it all to be coming to an end.
I cruised down a beautiful mountain pass with about 20 mates on their dirt bikes. The same guys who had encouraged me to get on a motorbike in the first place. The same guys who taught me how to ride, who watched me fall over and over all those years ago.
They were the ones there to bring me in safely to Brisbane, and I'm just so appreciative of them doing that. And as I got closer and closer to Brisbane and saw it emerge on the horizon, I don't know how to describe it. I'll probably spend the rest of my life trying to describe it. All that remains is to drive 20 kilometres to the centre of my hometown, Brisbane. Isn't she beautiful? I'll say goodbye to the guys and then let's go.
Thanks, mate. Terrific. Thank you for joining.
And into the arms of my family and friends. When I heard their cheers and saw everyone waiting to welcome me home, I felt all the frustrations and delays, the bruises, the exhaustion, all just melt away. I knew it was all worth it.
Thank you very much for coming down to welcome me home. It's been a long way home and a long way down. The reason I did this ride was to bring awareness to 10 really important humanitarian issues that are affecting not only the countries that I've ridden through, but affecting the world. It's been an incredible journey. It's changed my life. It's taken me 125 days, but I feel like I've had a whole lifetime of new experiences during that time.
125 days, 25,000 kilometres, 10 countries and 10 remarkable humanitarian stories. That's a lot in itself. And that's not including the 2 years spent planning this wheel-to-wheel expedition. There were so many amazing adventures along the way. So far, the expedition has raised $200,000 US, all of which is going to 10 incredibly worthy causes. Grassroots groups that are making a massive difference in their local communities and helping to make the world a better place.
Looking back at the trip and starting in my home city of Hong Kong, what a special feeling to have so much support from sponsors and friends and family, all the preparation work, getting the film crew together, very exciting times leading up to that departure.
Clean air is very important in Hong Kong because, believe it or not, our dirty air is killing almost 900 people a year, and at the latest estimate, almost 2,000.
The work of Clean Air Network really just, even today, is reinforced to me all the time, just how important that is to improve the quality of life here in Hong Kong. Getting to China was, well, it was a pretty big battle. Of course, the first time I tried, I couldn't do it. But being in China with Mihaela and the team at Gecko and just realising the significance of that environmental education that they're providing that no one else is.
I realized how little of common sense understanding on environment there is.
Once you've been out of the glitzy master plan cities, you can be literally an hour out of a city and then the people are living in primitive conditions like they have been for hundreds of years. Well, Vietnam's all about the bikes. It's a country of millions of bikes and you're sort of bumping off them. It's a bit like a computer game with all these things coming at you quickly. The serenity that Jill Robinson and Animals Asia have created with their bear sanctuary, I'll never forget it. Those memories are etched in my mind forever.
Bear farming is the most hideous and unnecessary program, I think, in the history of the planet.
Well, Laos will always be remembered for the Hell Day. I couldn't believe that I was only a little over 2 weeks into it and I'd arrived at a point where I couldn't go on. It'd been raining forever and the conditions were atrocious and I couldn't believe how cold it was. And that doesn't really come through on the camera, but what I was experiencing was really punishing. It was an absolute tragedy not to make it to the school opening during the adventure. I never could have thought anything could be so hard and it just challenged me so much. And because of the funds we were able to raise and then pass on to Child's Dream, Alan and I did get the opportunity later to go back and open a wheel-to-wheel school.
Every time I walk to a school, it touches me and it's the fulfillment of the dream. That's why the organization is called Child's Dream.
Cambodia, I was completely alone for long periods of time. I did some genocide tourism in Phnom Penh, which was heartbreaking. Then moving on to Siem Reap, and this seemingly endless need that exists that New Hope is trying to fill. They started out in education, but now they're providing all sorts of needs for those communities.
I would like to see the people not starving anymore. And in the future, like many people and much better and better.
Being in Thailand during Songkran was one of those unexpected benefits of the expedition, and it was quite a blast, you know, literally getting hammered with all that water. And then going up to Bangura, of course, what can I say? I think I was really, truly naive about just how special and ultimately normal people who are infected with HIV are.
The first medicine became available and we decided to give medicine to the children. So our children did not die anymore. It was no place for dying, it was a place all of a sudden for living.
Having Alan ride with me in Malaysia, it was so much fun. It's really a biker's paradise. Of course, we got shown around by the local Harley club, and then the next day got shown around by the BMW Motorrad club. So we had the best of it. Of course, the real reason we were there was for the Women's Aid organisation.
We want gender equality We believe that men and women are equal. It's as simple as that.
I learned that men have a really big role to play in that fight. You know, when I think back on Indonesia, there's too many experiences to recall, but going to Banda Aceh, where so many tens of thousands of people were killed just a few years back in the tsunami, that was really heartbreaking for me to see that. Then of course going off to Tripa peat swamp with Pan Echo, this swamp that was being converted for palm oil, and you know, just because things are out of sight doesn't mean they don't affect us. And this is one of the biggest environmental catastrophes of the modern age. Out of sight, out of mind. Nobody cares.
Deforestation of the peat swamps in Indonesia has a major, major impact on climate change globally.
When I left Lake Toba that morning and with an idea in my head to go to Jakarta, I didn't realise how big Sumatra was. Anyway, 37 hours later I was there, and that represented now in hindsight looking back the truly biggest challenge of the expedition for me personally. All alone in those chaotic conditions, mountain roads like this, and then arriving in Jakarta at 2 or 3 in the morning.
Enough to bring me to tears. So good.
The highs and lows of being an adventurer were brought home to me just out of Bandung, where I was involved in a head-on collision with another motorcycle. It reminded me of just how dangerous it is riding on these sorts of roads in Indonesia, and how lucky I am to have actually made it. We really planned our time in Timor-Leste well, and that culminated in meeting the president of Timor-Leste.
It's an honor. It's not every day that I have to be such a prominent person.
Oh, come on. It's our honor, believe me. To be able to meet a man who's won the Nobel Peace Prize and then back it up by meeting the head of the United Nations mission there, and then to be able to introduce those dignitaries to our small local Timorese charity Action for Change and connect those people, you know, it really showed me that we're playing an important role. I really got to truly immerse myself in Indigenous culture and understand this incredible innate knowledge that they carry, being a connected civilization for tens of thousands of years. And that was really an honor for me to be able to tell their story. And then of course, crossing the finish line with 20 schoolmates, you know, it was a surreal feeling, and you know, words can never describe it. The work of Wheel to Wheel will go on. After completing the first expedition, we've realised we've got this positive role to play in bringing these untold humanitarian stories to life. We're already planning the next expedition and the next production in another exciting location, tackling a new issue. It's always going to be on 2 wheels. It's always going to be a lot of fun, because after all, the journey never ends.
For more information, please visit wheel2wheel.tv.